Hey guys, so for today's video we've got a guide to driving in Orlando and we've split this up into 3 sections. So the first section is for complete beginners and it shows you how to familiarise yourself with driving an automatic. Obviously we mostly drive manual cars in the UK, so if you're already familiar with that you can skip ahead to the time shown on the screen now and that will take you to the section of just tips on driving around Disney, the signage, things like that, just familiarising yourself with the roads. And the third section is driving on the highway, where we go through a little bit about toll booths and stuff like that. So if you want to skip ahead to that, it is the time shown on the screen now. So if you're completely new to it, I would recommend watching the whole thing. Otherwise, you can skip ahead to the times that I've shown you. So Ian's just going to quickly go over when you first get into your vehicle, what is different from driving in the UK.
Once you get in, like the main thing if you've never driven an automatic is obviously there's no clutch pedal. So there's just the 2 pedals down here, the accelerator and then a big brake pedal. I generally use my right foot for everything. I think that's what most people do when they drive an automatic. You could do the brake with the left foot, but generally you'll find you brake really suddenly then. It's quite bad. So most cars, when you get in, are going to work the exact same way as a normal car. You'd put the key in and turn it. Now this car actually is a bit different, so you have to press down the brake and press this button to start the engine. So that's how that works. So that might be a bit different if you rent a different car. You might just have to put the key in and turn it as normal. And then the main things about an automatic is that while there is a gear lever here, or something that looks like a gear lever, obviously you're not going to be pressing down the clutch and changing from first to second to third, etc. You're just basically going to put it into drive, which is D here. So if I was to, and again, this is the other thing that always catches people out. You have to press the brake down before you can move this lever. So as well as pressing the brake down, I also have to press this little button on top. Quite often other cars it might be a button on the bottom that you lift up, a little bit like reverse in Vauxhalls back home. But basically this is how you're going to change from park, which is what you put it in when you're parked obviously. R is reverse, so in a minute when we reverse out we're going to use that. And on this car our little reverse camera comes up, which is kind of cool. Then there's neutral, which is neutral, that's like having the car not in gear. I don't really know what you'd use that for. Maybe sometimes people put it into that when they're waiting at lights. I generally just stay in drive and put the brakes on. Then you've got drive, which is what you're going to use 99% of the time, and that's going to just take you forward. And then this car does have a sport mode as well, which is the same as drive, but it's just a bit more aggressive with how it goes through the gears, so you go a bit more zoomy. So that's how that works. The only other things I'd recommend is when you pick up your rental car, it's very tempting to like just get in and drive off and off you go. But it's worth just checking where the lights are. So like on this particular car, they're over here on the left hand side. And again, this car's got an automatic mode, so I just leave it on automatic, and then when it gets dark it puts the lights on for me. I can obviously pick lights if I want to. There's also the fog lights here and some controls to turn the backlights for the controls up and down. So definitely figure out where the lights are, figure out where your windscreen wipers are, figure out how to spray the windscreen, because again, if you're like on a trip out, say to Kennedy Space Center, and you're on the highway and your screen gets dirty or it starts raining, you don't want to be like panicking trying to figure out where the controls are. Indicators generally are on a stalk on the left hand side, just like cars back home. And beyond that, it's kind of just however much you want to familiarise yourself. You want to figure out how the radio works, how to turn on the AC, which we definitely will be because it's very warm at the moment. So for someone like me who's being a bit dense here, I've not driven an automatic before, so you put it in drive and you just go. Yeah, so yeah, I forgot to mention, there is a handbrake here as well. Some cars have a handbrake like this, others actually will have a foot brake, so it will be a third. I know I said there'll only be 2 pedals, but actually in some cars there is a third pedal, kind of near where the clutch would be in a manual car. It will usually say on it foot brake or parking brake, and that's usually like a toggle. So you kind of press it down and it kind of clicks into place and acts like a handbrake. So then when you want to leave, you need to press it again and it will kind of release and come back up. So that works exactly the same way as a handbrake. So yeah, if we were going to leave, I would press down the brake, put it in reverse, and then I would take the handbrake off and I'd let the foot brake off and we'd start going backwards. So let's do it, let's go. Okay. So we're just going to like talk through it. I know this seems weird, but some people might really not feel comfortable doing this for the first time. Now I've finished reversing out, so again I've got the foot brake on. I'm going to just move it down into drive. There's actually an indicator on the dashboard that tells me which of these gears I'm in, because it's not always entirely clear from the markings next to the gear
And then
stick.
what were you doing with your pedals there?
So now I just let the brake off, and if the brake is off, you'll just start rolling forward at about 3 or 4 miles an hour. When you brake, it's going to feel really weird because in a car at home, if you did that without putting the clutch down, you would stall. But obviously, you just let the brake off, and then I'm just gently pressing the accelerator to take us forward. And it's just that getting over that feeling of just pressing the accelerator. I don't have to think about when it's time to change up a gear. The gearbox just handles that for me.
And obviously, the other things to remember, you're on the other side of the car.
Yep.
To at home and the other side of the road. So we're just going to go over a few of those things now, as in lights and road placement and stuff, because that can be confusing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the number one thing that people have trouble with is, as a UK driver, is being too far over to the right. So right now I'm trying to hug this middle double yellow line, and it feels like I'm way too far to the left. It does feel a bit unnatural, and a lot of people have a tendency to veer out to the right like that. Now, roads in America are pretty wide, so you don't have to worry too much, but just be aware of it, that you probably are going to drift a bit to the right, because that's what's going to feel natural to you, having driven on the left-hand side of the road. Also, when turning left is a common mistake to end up on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
It sounds silly. I've done it. I did it last time I was in Maine. And it's pretty embarrassing to be driving into oncoming traffic, especially when there was like 3 lanes of it. So I didn't really live that down with the guys that I was in Maine with.
Yeah, when you're taking your left turns, make sure you're going out wide enough. The roads are very wide over here, and it feels very unnatural coming out of a turning, going all the way across the road to then go left. But just make sure as you're coming up to junctions, you're thinking about where it is that you're going once the lights change. And the Disney signage, you're going to see the purple signs coming up, is very, very good in most cases, so you can just kind of follow those when you're in Disney. When you come up to a stop sign, so rather than give way in the UK, it will just say stop. Always stop at a stop sign, obviously. So here we're making a right turn.
Now this is an interesting one, because there actually is a filter light with an arrow to the right.
Yeah.
So we can go right. One of the other classic things that gets people confused over here is that at most traffic lights, if you're turning right, you can turn right even if it's a red light, as long as there's nothing coming. Now I know that sounds pretty confusing, but it's pretty much like a give way at a junction back home. So if you're turning right at traffic lights, most of the time you can turn right even if those lights are red. Just make sure there's nothing coming.
To be honest, if you're not sure whether you're supposed to do it or not, the person behind you will beep. If you're supposed to be going and you're not, they will beep you.
That's it.
Don't take offence to it. It's just because there's a lot of tourists out here and people don't know that. So
they know that you might be tourists, and they also know that you might not have seen signage or anything like that. So yeah, people will let you know. If you're in doubt, don't go. It's
exactly
fine. The worst thing that's going to happen is that someone honks their horn, and then you can go.
Yeah, obviously if it's clear.
But it's just worth being aware of, and especially if you see someone in front of you doing it and you think, oh my god, they just ran a red light. They're not. If they're turning right on a red, then that's totally okay most of the time.
Yeah.
I must admit, I still don't fully understand when you can and can't do it. Sometimes there are signs that say no right turn on red, but even then I've seen times where there is no signage, and sometimes people go and sometimes they don't, and I don't really know why. So I mean, if you're from the States, maybe let us know in the comments exactly how that works, because we've never really figured it out. But yeah, so most of the roads in Disney are very much like this. They're quite easy, wide roads. There's nothing too complicated. There's going to be a bunch of traffic lights and stop signs. And you just kind of work your way through. Like Victoria says, the signage is pretty much spot on in Disney. There's occasions where you see a sign for something you're trying to get to, and then it's not on the next sign, and it can be a little bit confusing, but 99% of the time you can just follow the signs and just keep going until you see the next sign for the thing you're looking for.
One thing that I've noticed, and is just something to be aware of, people change lanes a lot more erratically and last minute than they tend to in the UK. So just always be on the lookout for what's going on. People will sort of realise they're in the wrong lane and very suddenly cut across, whereas at home you might think, oh no, I've gone the wrong way, I need to go and turn around. People will just, we've seen people coming off the freeway just like so dangerously. They don't just wait till the next exit, they'll just, you know, come off even if it's really dangerous. So just be a little bit careful of people.
You definitely need to be very aware of what people around you are doing and be prepared for them to do something unexpected, much more so than at home.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just partly because of whether you're used to it or not. I know when I'm driving back in the UK, I can almost get a sense of what someone's about to do. It must just be like tiny little tweaks of the steering wheel that makes them move, and I kind of know that they're thinking about pulling out or something like that. I don't get so much of that sense over here. It seems to surprise me a lot more often. So here we're going to turn right on the red, which is what we were just
So this lane we're in is right only, so we're coming up to it.
I can see to my left there's nothing coming.
It's clear, so we're going to go
ahead.
Even though the light was red. Yeah. So that's what we were talking about. That is a little confusing, but
just like the guy in front of us did. We're not making it up. He did it as well.
The main thing to get used to is just when you first start, you know, making left turns and things like that, it feels very strange because, like I said, the temptation is to just get in your car and turn left as you would in the UK. If you do that, you're going to be coming into oncoming traffic. So your left turns, you're going to be going all the way across the road and then turning left. So it's, to me, that is just the weirdest thing when you first start driving over here. Like, it feels really odd. So yeah, we're just coming up to a right turn, and if you're using a sat nav, just be careful. So there's like a right turn here, but that goes into the gas station. So make sure you're not accidentally taking the wrong turn, because we've done that quite a few times.
So here we're going to do a left turn, which I think is the first one we've done on this trim. So
yeah, so a lot of the time you're kind of cutting through, there's like a gap in the middle section, like here.
And again, this is something that's quite strange to us coming from the UK. It's rare that we turn across oncoming traffic to turn in any direction, but for us it would be turning right. It's rare that you do this because you're kind of exiting the road you're on in the quote-unquote fast lane. So just be aware, if you're going to be needing to do a left turn where you know that you're going to cut across the other lane, try and get into that lane a bit in advance. Try and stay over to the left if you can. Yeah, so here we are in the parking lot.
And that's another thing, when you're in car parks, just make sure you're on the right side of the road, because again, it's easy to be kind of trawling around for a space and you're on the wrong side of the road, so just be careful of that as well. Yeah, so we're on I4, and one of the things we were just talking about actually, so where you have all your lanes, is this the freeway or the highway? I'm not sure. It's not the same as in the UK where you have like your slow lane and then your overtaking lanes. You can kind of overtake in any lane, which can seem a little bit confusing. The main thing that you have to do is watch for your exits, we were just saying.
Yeah, so there's like different kinds of exits normally. Like sometimes they're like at home where there's a slip road, so you can be in the outermost lane and you can choose whether you're coming off or not, and then there's others that will be marked exit only. And those lanes, if you're in that lane, you have to exit because the actual lane is gonna... Someone just cut me up.
Lovely.
Because the actual lane is gonna turn off of the main road. So yeah, just things to be aware of. The exit only lanes are normally marked quite clearly on the signs. You get like a yellow band at the bottom of the signs, and all the exits are numbered same way as back home. So like SeaWorld Wet and Wild, you can see there was exit 1 off of the 528, which is what we're on now.
Signage, I would say, is pretty good. Especially, we were saying first of all in Disney, you almost don't need sat nav. Their signage is pretty good.
Yeah, we've stopped using the sat nav when we're on Disney property because unless you get it really wrong, you can pretty much always follow a sign and get to where you want to be.
Yeah, they're very, very good. And on these roads, again, it's pretty good, but you probably are going to want to have a sat nav of some sort. With ours, we are actually using Ian's iPhone, and we've pre-downloaded the maps. Obviously, if you don't have data, you're definitely not going to be wanting to switch your data on and use your sat nav in that way, because you will come back to the most frightening phone bill ever in your life.
But it's good now because, I mean, Google Maps, for example, what we've done is you can do what they call offline maps. If you just search for that, offline maps, Google Maps, it'll show you how to do it. You basically just select an area, so before you come on your holiday, you figure out where you're going to want to go, and then you can just download that area of the maps, and then even when you've got your data switched off, you just go to plot a route like you normally would, and it will use that offline map when there's no data connection, and you sat nav and you don't want to pay $10 a day, then yeah, it can be a good option if you've got a phone, a smartphone with Google Maps. You can just do offline maps and use that instead.
And how would you say driving on the freeway kind of compares to driving on motorways in the UK?
I would say the main thing that seems strange to me is a lot of their speed limits are lower. So most of the freeways are 45, 55, 60 or 65. There's very few roads you get on that have a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit like our motorways back home. So that's a bit of an adjustment. However, because you're concentrating on so many things and it is all a bit different and you're trying to sort of stay aware of what's going on around you, 60 feels plenty fast enough. I don't ever feel like, I mean, we're doing almost 60 right now. It doesn't feel like we're kind of crawling along like it probably would do if I did 60 on the motorway back home. Because, you know, like I'm having to watch, this truck's merging in, I've got someone overtaking me, you know, there's a person behind me. So there's all kinds of things that you're paying attention to. So yeah, I would say don't feel like you need to smash up the speed limits because it's fine. Like, you're better off paying attention to what's going on, and especially if you haven't done it before, it can be confusing, you know.
Yeah.
Even though the signage is good, like we said, it's still, you know, it's not what we're used to, so you're not comfortable with it. So unless you've done a lot of driving in the States, yeah, I'd recommend, you know, obviously not going too fast.
Yeah, just be really careful. Oh, and one other thing, we just stopped to get gas, and you go in and pay first for the amount of gas that you want. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, especially if you're going to pay cash, then the way it works out here is not like back in the UK where you fill up and then you go in and pay. I guess because maybe they're trying to protect against people filling up and then driving away, you actually go in and tell them how much you want. So I just said I want $20 a regular on pump number 7. They ring it up for you, you pay for it, then you go back out and fill up, which is kind of nice actually, because if you know how much you need, whatever you've paid for is how much the pump will dispense. So once it got to $20, it stops filling. Also, it looks like we're hitting our first toll as well.
Okay, so yeah, that's another thing. There will be tolls that you need to pay if you're going out and about. We're off to Kennedy today, so we're obviously going a bit further afield than normal, and you will hit toll roads. This SunPass thing, if you have a rental car, if we went through this, they would charge it to us. So if you don't have cash, it's not a big deal. We're going to go through the cash lane because we do have some cash, hopefully enough. I've got my quarters here. But yeah, you can go through it and it will just charge to your car rental bill.
Hi. 225. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that was $2.25. I had my quarters ready for that, but we could have given him dollars, like, as in paper as well. You don't have to have you don't have to have coins. So yeah, just make sure you've got enough single dollars and stuff as well. And that's going through a toll. So as you're approaching it, just watch what lane you're in. Obviously there'll be the SunPass lane, and that was the cash lane. So if you are paying cash, just make sure you get in the right lane.
Yeah, quite often the cash lanes you almost have to kind of come off and exit, like we did just there. So normally the SunPass or Easy Pass, whichever automatic toll pass option there is, that's normally just basically the same as staying on the road, because you don't stop with those. That's the other thing, it just reads your car as you go past.
Yeah, you just drive through. So that is the end of our guide to driving in Orlando. I do apologise for the abrupt ending there. If you guys have any questions on anything that we covered or didn't cover, anything that you want to ask about driving in Orlando, then put it in the comments and we will do our best to answer that. And up next is a guide to spending money in Orlando, how much you might need for your vacation. So you can click that here. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!